Hello and welcome to our ongoing series of compliance webinars presented by Mango. In this webinar, you'll get some advice and perspective on how to implement an information security framework to meet ISO 27001. So thank you all to listening to the live event, and a big hello to those listening to a recording of this webinar. My name's Craig Thornton and I'm one of the owners here at Mango. So why not connect with me on LinkedIn, and why not subscribe to my blog? I blog weekly on various QHSE topics. So the housekeeping rules for the webinar today is please ask questions on the GoToWebinar application. So if I allowed some time at the end of the presentation for a question and answer section. So put your questions in and hopefully I'll answer them then. Secondly, I'm recording this webinar, and soon after you'll all get a link to the presentation. This will be a video of the presentation plus all the slides that you're seeing today. And finally, our next webinar will be on social responsibility. So look out for that. That's going to be on September the 26th at the same time. So lock that into your diaries. So on to today's topic. So you have me presenting today. Usually I have a guest, but in this case, as Mango has just implemented its own information security framework, and we've just been audited to 27001, I thought you may be interested in some of the things that we learned along our journey. So we're just waiting at the moment for our ISO 27001 certificate to turn up. So just a little bit about me. So I'm a part owner here at Mango Limited. I'm also the information security officer, so I was the one in charge of getting it all in place. But in a past life, I've been a director of quality, and I've also been a quality manager for some large tech companies here in New Zealand. But also, I've also been a certification auditor for ISO 9001, ISO 14001, and ASNZS 4801, which is health and safety. Plus, I've done some food auditing and things like that. So I just wanted to start up, and probably in the invitation, you would have seen a thing about some statistics that have come from some directors' reports or some surveys showing some interesting information about information security. So I just want to bring up these two reports here, the Horizon Scan report for 2018, and out of New Zealand has come this Directors' Risk Survey report that was introduced in May 2018, and there's some really interesting information to come out about information security from these two reports. So the first one, the BCI, or the Business Continuity Institute, said the main threats to organisation are as follows. So for a survey of 657 people across 76 countries, cyber attack is the #1 threat, data breaches, the second threat, unplanned IT and telecom outages, followed by interruption to the utility supply, and then adverse weather. So those are the major threats. And then once you've had a disruption, maybe some of those threats have occurred, then the biggest disruptions are unplanned IT and telecom outages. Adverse weather caused the most problem. Interruption to your utility supply, cyber attacks, and availability of talent of key staff. And then the trends happening into the future is the use of the internet for malicious attacks, loss of key people, influence of social media, new regs, and the prevalence and high adoption of internet dependency services. So let's just have a look at those. I just want to highlight some of these major threats that are happening to business at the moment. So cyber attack, data breach, unplanned IT, cyber attack, use of the internet, and the prevalence of high adoption of internet dependent services. So this is all to do with, so 40% of the big threats that are happening to business at the moment are all to do with information security. So that's an international report around risk. So information security is probably the #1 risk to your business. That's why I've said in the invitation to this, I can guarantee you that it's probably the #1 thing. And the second report, though, out of New Zealand, this is the New Zealand Institute of Directors. They did a survey of 70 directors in New Zealand, and this is quite an interesting finding. So one of the, you can go and read the reports yourself, but one of the areas was around organizational risks, and external to the organization, number one was cyber, whether that's cyber attacks or whatever. It's still the number one risk to businesses in New Zealand, followed by brand and reputational risk, followed by natural catastrophe like earthquakes, floods, and extreme weather. So obviously we've experienced earthquakes here in Christchurch in New Zealand, and I could talk for ages about how that affected Mango, particularly around the power outage. So when the earthquake hit, when the power goes down, it's hard for you to recover. So fortunately, our software was sitting in a data center that was running on a diesel generator. But as a business, having no power, it's almost impossible. And then if your business was in the center of Christchurch, it was under lockdown for 2 or 3 weeks, where the army was patrolling the center of town, and you couldn't get in to your office to recover very well. So I know of some cases where people were sneaking into their offices under dark and trying to get around the army to get into their offices and stealing basically their servers to try and get their operation back up and running. So certainly number three I've had a lot of experience with, but still for business, cyber is number one. And then internal to business, number one is the loss of a key person is the number one risk to the business, followed by 2 information security issues, major IT disruption and loss of data or data corruption. So once again, 50% of the risks here are to do with information security. So again, I'm saying to you that information security is probably your biggest risk and you should be doing something about it. So 2 statements were of interest in that second report, where 30% of those surveyed said they did not have an effective risk management framework in place to manage this risk. So if you think about it, these are companies with, some of them with professional directors. How can they allow 30% of their businesses to not have an effective risk management framework in place to manage that cyber risk? So I thought that was quite unbelievable, but those are the statistics. And secondly, the other point in that report says people don't know where to start with all this information security. They have no idea where to start. So that's what this webinar is about. Where do you start? What do you do? Now that we know what the dangers are, let's get stuck into what you can do about it. So I always say start with a strategy. That's what we did here at Mango. So I'm going to talk you through for the next sort of 20 minutes. This is what we did here at Mango to put in place our information security framework. So we wanted to work out right from the start. So we sat down, what do we want to achieve with this information security standard or framework? So this was our strategy. So we wanted to preserve the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of customers' data. This is a little bit that's come out of 27001. It's a part of the introduction to that, but it really sort of sums up what we wanted to do for Mango. Because in subsequent slides, I'll talk to you about, we basically, our product, Mango, the product itself, looks after customers' data. So, and we've got to make sure it's confidential to that customer and nobody else can see it. We don't want other customers seeing that data. We want the integrity. So if someone puts information into Mango, it's got to present back out. So it's got to have good integrity. The data has to be accurate. And of course it has to be available. So we have to host our software, our Mango software on the internet through a data center. And the data center has to be always available. It can't be down, so we've got to make it available and trying to achieve the 100% uptime that customers demand. So that's our first strategy. The other thing is we wanted to assure customers that we are well managed and we're a professional organisation that uses best practice for information security, which sort of ties into this third one, to give confidence to the customer's IT department. So 2 and 3 sort of tie together. So almost on a daily basis, when we're selling our product to customers, customers are asking us always about our IT infrastructure, whether we do backups, how we manage malware and hacking and all sorts of different things. They want to know this sort of stuff. And so for us to present back to them, well, how do you trust us? We say, well, we're a professional organization. We do best practice, and we do that by meeting ISO 27001. So we want to give them confidence, because some of the questions that they're asking us are almost direct copies out of ISO 27001. And we'll go into that a little bit of detail later on. And fourthly, we wanted to achieve compliance to 27001, but we've also got these other things that have sprung up. So GDPR, that comes out of the UK and Europe as well. We mainly sell mango into the UK. Poppy, that's a standard that's in South Africa. We sell our product into South Africa. And there's a Privacy Act information out of Australia and Privacy Act information out of New Zealand. So we have to comply with all of these regs and these standards. And so GDPR is the big one. That's the one that's come through in May of this year that everybody would be aware of. But these others that are coming through, like Brazil has just implemented one that's almost identical to GDPR. Japan are about to introduce their own GDPR variant. And then Poppy, it's the South African one, that's identical. And the Privacy Act's, I'm not sure about Australia where that's at, but in New Zealand, that's under review at the moment with a whole lot of GDPR stuff that has been added into that. So we have to meet all of these strict regs. There's some heavy fines if you don't meet those. But just to be aware that having 27001 doesn't mean that you're meeting GDPR or Poppy or the Privacy Act. You've got to do additional stuff. It just helps the framework that sits behind all of those things. So 27001 doesn't cover off consent. That's consent for you to maybe promote your product back at people, or the data portability between different products, or a customer's right to be forgotten so that they can have their data removed from Mango, and those others there. So we sat down and we really debated the strategy first before we chose a framework. Okay, so next, choose the framework. So, from my background, I'm experienced with ISO 9001, ISO 14001. So there was, I am biased towards 27001. So I'm aware there are a range of other frameworks like COBIT and NIST, and there's some industry-specific ones, PCI for credit cards and HIPAA for medical stuff, and HISO. So I'm aware there are other frameworks, but I think for ease of use and for its international flavor, and that it meets these other standards, I think you should seriously consider looking at 27001 for your own businesses. You don't have to get certified to it, but it's a great framework to build your own systems from. And so many of you would recognize the clauses here. So it starts at clause 4 through to clause 10. This is based on the Annex SL framework that ISO is enforcing all of their management standards to follow this structure. But the beauty about the 27001 is that it has this Annex A, which are all the basically it's a great code of practice or great advice and guidance on how to do some of these controls for some of these risks. So we'll get into that in a little bit detail later on. So that's the framework. So you need to be aware that not only is it ISO 27001, but there's a whole range of other standards that sit in the family of the 27s. So the one at the top, the vocabulary standard, this is to do with all your terms and definitions, is the 27000 itself. We've got that standard, and that's a very good standard as well. That helped us with definitions around some of the technology that you've got to think about. There's the requirement standard, so this is where you can get certified to 27001. And 27006 is to do with the requirements for bodies that provide the audit and certification to the information security management systems. So I don't think you need to be aware of that one, but just to be knowledgeable that it's there. And then 27009, that's to do with writing standards for standards. So you can probably ignore that one. But it's these guidance standards, 27,002, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 13, 14, 16. You should be, if you're looking at going for 27,001, you should be buying those guidance standards, because the 27,002 is the code of practice for the controls. So this is the Annex A, but in a little bit more detail, and it basically tells you how to, tells you which policies you should write, tells you what you should be doing for some of these controls that you've got to put in place for some of these risks around, say, passwords or mobile devices or remote working or hiring staff or recruiting staff or whatever it is. There's some fantastic guidance, and there's about 116 controls that you've got in ISO 27002 that give you great, so it's like a sister to the 27001. So it's basically the sister document that tells you how to put these controls in place. And so that was the guidance document that we used every day when we were looking at all the controls for our information security. Then 27,003 is, you should get that one. That's the how to implement 27,001. That's the implementation guidance. 27,004 is the measurement one, so what sort of measures you should have in place. 27,005 is the risk management one, how to do good risk management. I'll go and tell you how we did that. 27,007 is how to do your auditing. The TR 27,008 is guidance for auditors. The 13 is for how to integrate 27,001 with 20,000. So ISO 20,000 is to do with service management. So if you're in the service industry, you might want to look at that one. And the 27,014, that's governance. So that might be great for your board. Now the 27,016 there, that's a great wee document because that's a technical report which provides a methodology allowing organizations to better understand economically how to more accurately value their identified assets, value the potential risks to those assets, and appreciate the value that information protection controls deliver to those information assets. So that's all around the economics of your assets. And then down into specific sectors. So the 27,010 is for guidance on intersector and inter-organizational communication. So if you're maybe you've got an API and you're dealing with a government department or you're dealing with another product, that's an interesting one that you should look at there. That helps you with guidance for interacting with other organizations and sharing data across those organizations. The next one, 11, that's for telecom organizations. 15 is for financial services company. 17 is for cloud companies like ours, like Mango. And then 18 is a code of practice for protecting personal or personally identifiable information in public clouds, acting as PII processes. So if you're managing personally identified information for business or for others, then that's for you. And then 19 is for energy utility industry. So don't just think that it's 27,001. It's a whole family of other standards that you should be aware of, and you should consider purchasing to help you as you implement 27,001. Okay, so next we looked at the structure of how we work. So this is how we thought about how we interact with all the other parts to our business. So with Mango this is the product itself. So it sits in a data center on the other side of Christchurch here, and customers interact with it. So we've got Mango Limited. So I'm sitting in Mango Limited's office at the moment. So there's some sort of interaction that we have with the product. Obviously, we build the product, we support the product, we sell the product, we market the product. We have interaction with our suppliers. So one of our suppliers is the data center, so they supply that service for us. Next is we obviously have to, we have end customers, and then who use the software, and then we have partners. So we have partners around the world that resell our product for us. So everybody sort of interacts with each other. So this whole structure has to be able to manage information security across this whole frame, this whole structure. So I'll show you how that works on this next slide, because it ties into this first section. So when you're dealing with the first section of 27001, it talks about the context. And it talks about interested parties. So you need to think clearly who interacts with you and what are their needs and what are their expectations. So for Mango, these are the interested parties for us. We've got owners and shareholders, customers, suppliers and contractors. We've got partners, we've got employees, we've got regulators, and we've got the community where we sit, maybe our neighbours. So that's where that structure comes in. You've got to then work out how all of this ties together and how do you interact with all of these people. So once you've worked that out, you then look at your business purpose and you look at your vision and your mission. And so how do all these people interact so that you can create a business purpose for yourself with a vision and a mission? And so we use two documents, an end user compass and a partner compass. So that tells us what is our core purpose as a business, and then what are our unique buying propositions, what are our brand anchors. There's a whole suite of things that we do there for both the end user and for our partners. So setting all this very high level information up is crucial to working out your information security. You then do a SWOT analysis. So what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are the opportunities? What are the threats? So you work through an exercise around that. And from that, you then create your business strategies around achieving whatever goals you want to achieve. And information security is tied into each of those. So that's the context, setting yourself up, setting the framework in place. It comes through the context. Next up is leadership. So you want to be getting a commitment from your senior management, whether it's through the board, whether it's through the CEO or the senior management team. You want to be talking to them about information security and getting a commitment from them that, hey, look, here's a framework. Let's use this framework. Let's use 27001 as our framework for putting information security into our business. Inside of that is roles and responsibilities and authorities, and we've defined one here in Mango as the Information Security Officer, which is me. So I've got some specific requirements for keeping the system up to date, making sure that I'm communicating with the certification company that certifies us. I'm communicating with the local regulators around information security. There's an organisation in New Zealand called CERT NZ. They send out notifications of any security things that are happening out in the industry. So recently there's been some information security problems around people receiving emails notifying them that these companies know their passwords. And so that was a threat that was sent through a couple of weeks ago, comes through to me, then I communicate that with inside of Mango, communicate it to our staff, make them aware that if they receive these emails, notify me, and take it from there. And also, you create a very high level information security policy so that your organization is committed to information security. So the next one after that is planning. So this is a biggie. This is how you plan your whole information security management system. We'll go into quite a bit of detail around this. So you have to work out your risks and your opportunities for your business. So you do a risk assessment, and once you've worked out your risks, you put some treatments in place. So you have to look at it for not only your business, but also for your whole information security management system. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to prevent the loss of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You then have to compare these controls with Annex A, and you have to create this thing called a statement of applicability. So that's a listing of all the controls in Annex A, and you list down which ones you're going to meet and which ones you're not going to meet. So in Annex A, like I say, there's 120 or 116 different controls. Some of them there may apply to your business, and some of them may not apply to your business. So you've just got to work out which ones apply and which ones don't apply. So that's through the statement of applicability. So how did Mango do this? Oh, see, and then finally we have to come up with some so from our risks and opportunities, those ones that we've deemed to be of a high risk and put a higher priority around those. We've put some objectives in place, particularly around server uptime and information security breaches. Okay, so how did Mango do this? So first thing we did was we created an asset register. Because inside of that asset, once you've listed all your assets, those assets will have some outputs, which will be information. We then go through this classification register. So not all information is the same. And I'll go through that in a little bit of detail. And then finally, from that classification, because they're all not the same, we put them in a ranking order of importance, and we put them onto our information security risk register. And I'll show you how you do that. So the first two here is our risk assessment, and the last one there is our risk treatments. So let's have a look at our asset register. So you have to list all your information assets, not just your assets, but your information assets. So these are servers, or your PCs, your laptops, your smart devices. Whiteboards are information devices, monitors, TVs, software. So that could be, like for documents, we use Dropbox, or for email, we use Google email services, or, we use a lot of different software. For our website, we use HubSpot. For our accounting package, we use Xero. So there's a lot of stuff, and you basically list that. And you can see here on the right, this is actually a bit of a slice out of our asset register. Whose computer, it's given an asset number, and then it's got a rego number or a serial number. So you list all of that down. So we've captured everything in the organization on an asset register. Once you've done that, you then classify that. So the information that sits inside of those things, you classify it. So we've got this classification system here. You can use this yourself if you like. I think I stole it from somebody else when I did this training in Australia. So we have secret, confidential, internal, and public. So public information could be stuff, say, that's on our website, that's public. Internal, that could be stuff that we've got in our management system. We've got our own manual that we run to here. We're also ISO 9001 certified, so we have some internal policies and procedures that our staff use. There's some confidential information there that is confidential to the organization, and then maybe secret, that could be maybe board level information, or maybe very secret financial information that you want to keep to yourself. So from your asset register, you've got information output from that. You then classify that information. Once you've classified it, you put it all onto your information security risk register. And so this is how we did it this is a typical risk register, but it took a bit of work up and down around it. We went around the houses a few times trying to get this. So the first thing is the item or the name. We say, what is the vulnerability? What harm can that do to the business? What's the risk level? Put in our actions and controls and actions. There's another one there called additional controls. That just links to our policies and procedures inside of Mango. Work out your residual risk level once you've put your controls in place. Then mitigations that sit on top of that. And then if those things go wrong and don't actually work, what are your contingencies to get that back up and running? So that's an extra thing that we've just added recently as well. So that's our information security risk register. Send me a note afterwards if you want any help with that. So this is the key central document for the whole of 27001. And I think it's something like 150 lines long from memory. We go through every piece of software we use. We go through, servers. We go through everything and look at it in great detail. How we actually, what are the vulnerabilities with that software? What harm can, if that gets breached? What vulnerability gets breached? What harm does that do to the business? So that's what you do for that. So now you've got your strategies in place. You've got commitment from management. You've done a risk assessment. Now you're into getting it all in place. Whoop. Rightio. So you've done that. You then have to create some HR procedures. So we've got a whole bunch of procedures around recruiting. So for our 9001, we've had to update it for 27001 because reading up about some of these major hacking or major hacks that have occurred, especially the Ashley Madison one, where it looked like it was an internal, so the staff hacked their systems and the staff sent the information out. So we've put in some extra steps around our recruitment procedures. So one that you should consider, and the one that we've implemented, is that we now do police checks on when we employ staff. So yeah, there's a whole suite of new things you've got to be aware of in your HR procedures. So you've got to have disciplinary procedures. You've got to have termination procedures. So we completely revamped our employee or IEAs, our individual employment agreements. So we got everybody to re-sign their employment agreements. So we gave these agreements to our lawyers, and got them to rewrite them with information security built into them. So it's something that you should consider. We've completely updated our consultation awareness and communications procedures. So we're communicating way more with staff around, particularly around vulnerabilities, if they're receiving spam or if they're receiving information. And there's one yesterday that came through to a client where they're now getting phone calls from people saying that they know their systems are down or know how to hack their system. So, these threats come through not only just through email, but they also come through phone calls. We've also banned the use of USB devices with those hard disks or hard drives. So no more USB devices in the organisation. So we basically had a big clean up and threw them all out, and notified staff of all of that. And then you need to have obviously procedures and policies in place for how you manage your document control. Fortunately, we use Mango, the product itself, for our management system. So all our documents are all in Mango and approved and published through that system. Rightio. So now this is the meat and potatoes. This is the main part of the standard. This is the operations part of the system. So you're taking all of that information that's come from your risk register. So now how do you actually run the business? How do you actually operate so that you meet those things that you've listed in your controls? So this is where the annex to 27001 comes in play. And so Annex A5 says you've got to have a policy in place for information security. So we've got one of those. A6 requires you to have organization of information security. So we've got responsibilities for everybody listed down and everybody trained in those responsibilities. We've also got a mobile device policy. We've got a remote working policy. So we've got some of our staff work remotely and don't work in New Zealand, they work in another country. So, how do we control the information security for those guys? HR security. So this is what I was talking about before, but it goes into a whole lot more detail. Recruiting, training, competency, discipline, termination. How do you manage the knowledge that you've got within inside of the organization? We use Mango, plus we also have for our developers, we have a wiki as well for coding standards they've got to use. So there's that. So A8 talks about the how do you manage your assets? So this is how we defined our classification of our assets. And then, as I said before, how do we handle the media that we get? So USB devices, all hard drives, all sorts of media comes in, through by email. And then, as part of that, how do we dispose of the media? Well, you just can't chuck that stuff out and put it in the bin. You've actually got to dispose of it. And so we basically drill holes in our hard drives so they can't be used again. And inside of that, there's a requirement to have an acceptable use policy. So what information is acceptable and what's not. So you need to have good policies and procedures in place for that. You've got to have good HR stuff around that. Next one. So this is probably the biggest one of them all. Access control. So this is all around, you've got to have an access control policy. And you've got to work out who has privileges, who has authorizations, who has permissions, who has access rights. How do we manage passwords? That took us a long time to get our heads around that one, because we've got so many bits of software around. We had to work out who's in control, who has privilege, who has authorization to create new users, what permissions do those new users have, what access do they have, how do we manage passwords, how do we handle passwords. So there's a whole suite of procedures that we've created for that, but we've kept them very simple. We haven't written separate procedures. We've just got one procedure, but it's reasonably long. How do we manage that? And then A10 is around cryptography. So with inside Mango, we've got different methods for encryption. So across the web we use SSL certificates, but with inside of Mango we also have encryption inside the product as well. So you've got to have encryption controls and de-encryption and keys. So every time there's a transaction inside of Mango, there's a new key that's set up. So there's key management that's got to be put in place. So you've got to think carefully about your encryption. And you also have to carefully look at all your physical security. So who has access to the office, who's got keys, who's got the alarm. And another part of that is we also have a clean desk policy. So if you ever visit our office, you'll see that almost all the desks have no paper on them whatsoever. And anytime you print something out, you have to shred it by the end of the day. You're not allowed to have bits of paper lying around on your desk, particularly financial reports and things like that. But so we've enforced a clean desk policy, and so we're pretty much paperless. You print out every so often, but by the end of the day, it's shredded. Rightio. Continues. We've got a whole section in our system around malware and hacking and how we do backups and how we log events as people go through Mango. We have to capture event logging and monitoring. We have to list the vulnerabilities. So where are we vulnerable and what controls have we got in place around those vulnerabilities? So that's another big section of our system. Communication security. So, with inside our network here, who can get into the network? How can they get into the network? And how do we communicate across that network? Do we communicate with other businesses or not? So you've got to really look at your communications. With inside Mango here, obviously we're developing the software. So and we're buying bits of software all the time to put into Mango. So there's specifications to be written, there's development or coding to be done, there's testing to be done. We've got engineering principles that we've got to follow. So we've got a whole suite of procedures for those. And then suppliers. So when we're using suppliers, so for example, here we have a data center that hosts our software, but we also contract out a lot of our IT to a contract IT company that comes in and does all our IT servicing for us. So they're looking at the servers, they're checking that the backups are being done, they're checking if there have been any breaches or uptimes. They're doing all of that for us on our behalf. We're paying them a retainer to do that. So you've got to continually evaluate and control and review and approve your suppliers. So they're a key part to this information security. And then incident management. So what happens when you have a breach? How do you report it? How do you record it? Do you investigate it? What corrective actions do you put in place? So for any of these things that come through from CERT NZ, I list those down as potential breaches. They haven't actually happened here, but they are potential or potentially could happen. So I list them down there, report them, record them, and then we talk about them as a team and talk about what you should do if you do get some spam or something that may affect the business, or making sure that people don't click on links or don't run .exe files. The second to last section is business continuity. So we've got a business continuity plan, a BCP, that we test every year, making sure that we've got business continuity if something does go wrong. And then compliance, so we've got a bunch of legal registers, or a legal register that captures all of the legal things that we have to meet, including the Privacy Act, and we say how we meet that act. So Section 8 of Operations of 27001 is the real, get down and dirty area. This is the stuff that you've got to do. This is stuff you've got to follow. But it's a great framework. It's all listed out for you. It tells you what you should do. Not in great detail, but it just tells you what sort of policies you should have in place, what procedures you should have in place, what records you should keep. The annex there on 27001 is a fantastic resource. It's basically, this is everything you need to do all in one system. Just a reminder, you can ask questions as we go. There's a question there from Jennifer. So she's saying great content, thank you. So the presentation will be available for reference after the session. So I'm recording this, and at the end, once it's been rendered, I'll send you all the video of this again, plus all of the slides that you're getting. That will all come through. Okay, so now that you've got your operations in place, you should evaluate your performance. So you should be monitoring how well you're doing. Are you meeting your objectives? How well are you meeting your objectives? For us, what is our server uptime? Have we had any breaches of the service? How well are we running? Have there been any complaints? You should be running audits, so we run annual audits. We use a DIME system, which is documented, implemented, monitored and evaluated. We run a system there. We do annual audits just to make sure everything's working well. But probably the best one we do is we run monthly management review meetings with all the staff. So all staff, we get them all in one room, and we have a 1 hour meeting every month, and information security is the first thing we talk about, and we go through all the issues to do with information security. So we review how well we're doing. We're looking at all the things that we've just talked about. We're looking at malware, we're looking at our backups, we're looking at all the bits and pieces that we should be looking at. Is all done through the monthly management review. In addition to that, the senior managers, we sit down and we have a monthly operations review, and we're looking at all the customers that are signed up in the month, and looking at making sure that they're well serviced. We're looking at the performance of the partners, making sure that they're performing well, and that information security is top of mind there as well. So key part of your system is continually monitoring and reviewing it. We just happen to do it on a monthly basis. It's up to you how often you want to review your performance. And then improvement. So we have an improvement process. We use Mango to do that. So we're recording improvements all the time. Someone comes up with an idea, we record it through the system. And like I said before, all the incidents that come through, we review those. We talk about them in the monthly management review, make everybody aware of the corrective action to fix those. So that's the standard, that's the framework. So as part of our strategy there, we wanted to be certified to ISO 27001. So in the start of a month ago, we got ourselves audited by DQS with an auditor for 3.5 days, and he had two fellow auditors as sitting in and viewing the audit, because they're training up to be auditors. So there were basically 3 auditors for 3 days, or 3.5 days, and we're only a small organisation, but they went through everything with a fine tooth comb, just make sure what we said we'd do, we were actually doing. And we set up interviews with they visited the data center, they met with our IT company, they came in and interviewed them. They had overseas, our overseas staff were interviewed as well. So it was a fantastic exercise to go through. So some of the lessons that you may want to consider is, when you're documenting your systems, you document to your process, and try not to document to the standard. So they commented that our system was documented was quite thin compared to some of the doorstops that these auditors are exposed to. And what they've seen in the past is that people will just document and document and document, and suddenly they've got big fat manuals they've got to pour through for some companies that are only sort of 3, 4, 5 employee size organizations. So our approach is we document to the process that we follow, and if we have to implement something a little bit more, we'll still document that, but we won't document to the standard. So we will put in what the standard's required, but we won't do any more. So it makes it a nice, thinner, easier to audit standard, and always trying to keep it simple. So we write it so that when someone reads it, they're actually understanding it. So 5 to 7 word sentences, very simple, basic, no jargon, nice, basic, easy to understand. So we try and spread the compliance load across departments. So yes, we are only small, but we want each different department to share the load, rather than it all be on my shoulders, on the information security officer's shoulders. For development, I leave it up to the developers. I just keep an oversight, but the developers own their wiki, they own their procedures, they make sure that they follow those procedures. So try not to put it all on the IT department. I'm sure that's what happens in most organizations, but we haven't even got an IT department, so we want to share the compliance load across departments. Okay, So getting near to the end here. So the takeaways for today, you should seriously consider ISO 27001-2013 as a framework for your business. It fits all business, but you should really sit down as a team and think carefully about this, because I think it's a fantastic standard. And some people are saying it could be bigger than ISO 9001. Actually, so, like those two surveys done recently, information security and cyber attacks and whatnot are the biggest threats to business now. Why not put in some framework that's going to protect your business for the future? It's a great way to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your information, so that you hold a lot of information, about customers, about yourself. You've really got to protect it. Be aware that there's some other great standards associated with 27001. There's 2, 3, and 0. Those are fantastic standards that help you implement it, put the controls in place, and help you define what you need to know. So be aware that there's some other great guidance standards. We've bought all of those ourselves here at Mango, and they've been a fantastic value to getting this in place. Don't over document. I've been doing this for years and years and years, and I've been an auditor for years and years and years. Anything that's over document, no one ever uses it, no one ever reads it. So why over document it? What a waste of time that is. So don't over document, just document enough so that people are aware of it. The important thing is to continually review and update and talk and discuss and understand what's actually happening on your site around information security. Make sure that everybody's aware of what they've got to do, what their role is, what their responsibilities are. That's far more important than documented procedures. It's an everyday fight that I have with people. Stop sitting in front of your computer making your Word documents look nice and pretty. Get out there and talk with your staff and make sure that they're aware of what they're going to do. Stop writing policies and procedures. No one reads them anyway, so just stop doing that. Get out there, talk with your staff, and understand what's happening. Understand your culture. And although it's not necessary, you don't have to get certified, but I think certification just gives you that level of assurance that you can give your customers to say that you're ISO 27001 certified. It's not crucial, but I think the exercise we went through with the auditors, we learned a huge amount. They audited to a great level of detail, so they really understood what was happening in the business. So our level of assurance went through the roof. So I think you should seriously consider getting yourself certified. Obviously, there's cost involved, but there's a huge cost involved if you have if you have some vulnerabilities that come under threat, and suddenly some of your information is compromised. The business and the reputational risk is immense. So put some of these things in place. So, and that's the end. So please ask any questions. I haven't got any more questions other than from Jennifer. Please ask any more questions. Also, if you go onto our website, onto the Mango website, I'm writing a bunch of blogs as we go through, or as we've been going through this process. So I think I'm up to about part 13. There's going to be about 30 parts. So I've written about every single clause as we've gone through it. So if you want any more information, jump onto our website, jump onto the blog, and have a look at the information on the tags on the right-hand side. Click on information security. You'll be able to see some blogs there that will give you way more information about what I've just talked about, clause by clause by clause, with some examples about what we've done as well. So once we've certified as well, I'm going to be looking at our manual, I'm going to just take out some of the classified, or some of the information that may be confidential. I'm just going to take that out. So in probably a month's time, or a month and a half's time, look out. You'll be able to download a free information security manual. So look out for that on our website. I'll send it through as a blog anyway. So you'll be able to download your own free information security manual. That'll save you a hell of a lot of time, and you'll be able to see how easy and simple it is. So very good. So people are saying very nice things. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Joan. Jennifer. What are you saying, Jennifer? I'm just bringing you up on my screen here. We are accredited 9, 14, 18, 4801. Can 27001 be easily integrated into the management system? Do you have a requirements matrix? Jennifer, that is a great question. Can 27001 be integrated into all of these others? And I say yes, it can be easily. So I can send, do I have a matrix mapping the standards? So great question. I don't have a matrix mapping the standards. What we did is we've got 9001, and we just put bits into our standard integrated system. Have a look when I send you the manual. Have a look at the manual when I send you the manual in a month's time. Have a look at that. You'll be able to see how they're fully integrated. Otherwise, send me an email after this, Jennifer, and I can send you some details about how we did it. So send me an email. Jennifer, you would have got my email, so craig@mangolive.com. Good question from Rick. Why did you prepare a manual? So yes, there is no requirement to have a manual. We prepared a manual purely for communication with our staff. I know there's no requirement to have a manual. Plus, some of the controls do actually require documented information, like documented policies. So we did prepare a manual. Thanks, Phil. Catch you later. And great, thank you from Jennifer. So that's the end of the questions. 2 o'clock. That's it. So good luck out there. Hopefully you'll enjoy getting yourself certified to 27001. But yeah, send me any questions if you want. Post this. I will answer those questions. And look out for the next webinar, which will be on social responsibility. So thank you all today. Much appreciated. And have a good day.